everyone. I'm Hillary.
And I'm Clinton.
And welcome to BlackLantic.
In the flesh.
Another in the flesh.
We are an East Coast podcast with the goal of bringing Black East Coast voices to the world.
You can expect to hear from us every week with open discussion, guests, exploring topics and perspectives from all over Atlantic Canada.
So be sure to check out our website at blacklantic.ca.
Or search for BlackLantic on all social media channels.
Except this week, we are not in the Atlantic, are we?
We're in Toronto!
Yep. So we're doing a live podcast, a podcast from Toronto. I just touched down last night with my fam. I'll be here for the week.
Yeah.
And we thought that this week, since I'm in Toronto and I'm from Toronto living in New Brunswick and Hillary's from New Brunswick living in Toronto, that we should maybe talk about, should you live in New Brunswick?
No. But yes.
Thank you. That's been another episode.
Yeah, that was it. Thanks for watching. I guess I'll start by saying that whenever people ask where I'm from and I start talking about New Brunswick, they're
like, where?
They're not often where. They, several times recently it gets confused immediately with Nova Scotia. And I have to be like, no, New Brunswick, not Nova Scotia, and that they're different. People obviously have a lot of questions about diversity, inclusion, what's it like there. I feel like I often start out by poo-pooing on New Brunswick because of my experience growing up with a lack of diversity, the lack of inclusion, the lack of opportunity when I was there. And a lot of that seems, and I mean, you'll say whether or not, seems to have changed. But by the time I get all of my frustrations out, I only have positive things to say about the people, the land, the nature, the picturesque of it all, the beaches, the food. It has a lot of wins. It has some detriments, like most places. So that's sort of my mini spiel that I always end up giving. I'm always like, wish there was more Black people, wish the government was better. But do you want to walk on the ocean floor? Then go to Hopewell Rocks.
Yeah, exactly. So New Brunswick is a beautiful province with amazing scenery, lots of good things to do outdoors, hiking trails, depending on where you live in New Brunswick, usually pretty close to the ocean if you're in Moncton especially. But yeah, there's a lot of healthcare issues, education issues, a lot of government corruption. Many would say the province is owned by a corporation called Irving. And so there's pros and cons for sure. Me growing up in Toronto, I obviously was exposed to a lot more diversity, a lot more culture. However, it's a much more expensive city to live in. They have a good education system, a pretty good healthcare system. And, lots to do, lots of opportunities. But is it a better place to live is the question. Again, I was able to be exposed to a number of different things. I was able to, depending on what kind of industry you want to get into, what kind of career you want to have, what kind of education you want, there is so much here in Toronto to experience. And I'll be doing a lot of that this week with my family, which I'm really looking forward to. At the same time, New Brunswick appears to be a really great place to have a family, to raise a family. If you want your kids to be exposed to the outdoors and, I don't think Toronto's dangerous, but a lot of people would argue a safer upbringing or a safer environment. At the same time, if you're a person of color, it could actually be a much more dangerous environment for you.
I'll add briefly that COVID did make a lot of that worse just because healthcare infrastructure, the homeless had no place to isolate or be safe, which then made things much more dangerous. So lately there's been an uprise of carjackings, people being stabbed on the TTC, people being pushed in front of the TTC train, which happened not that long ago. Yep. So it does feel like stuff's getting wild. At the same time, the weather's nicer and everyone's been inside. And so there's all of these mitigating factors. I think when I moved to Ontario 5 years ago, I was big population, of course you're going to have more reports about more violence. There's 8 million people here compared to 1 million in the whole of New Brunswick. Yep. It does feel like it's gotten a little bit worse now, but everything's gotten worse everywhere.
That's fair. I moved away from Toronto 12 years ago. In the 70s and 80s, the crime in Toronto was rampant and completely out of control. I think things toned down a bit in the 90s and 2000s, and maybe it is back. Yeah, you're here. One of the bigger problems in Toronto was bike theft, like bike theft capital of the world.
Yes.
And of course, you have your really bad neighborhoods. But still, I know the crime had reduced significantly in the 90s and the 2000s, and maybe it has increased. I heard about the person getting pushed on the train, but I mean, that happens. That does happen. That's happened like enough times when I was growing up. Stabbings, there's a lot of stabbings. Like, I've never felt unsafe on the train, and I know I'm a male, but I've never felt in danger. Now they have the trains that the whole train is one train, so there's a lot more opportunity for people to mingle and interact, maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like, if you are a young person with ambition who, like, still figuring out what you want to do with your life and all of that, Toronto is definitely the place to be.
I did look up statistics because you said something, and I remembered a report that just came out that it's now been proven that Moncton is actually less affordable for young people to live in than Toronto.
I heard that
so
last
for
week.
Being the most expensive place to live, Toronto is somehow better for young people. So the monthly deficit for Moncton is 1,139.3, and in Fredericton it's 959.13, and in Lethbridge, Alberta, it's only $34.92, your deficit for like living there. Data was gathered on people aged 15 to 29 in these 27 cities using what the bank calls a real affordability index, which subtracts the cost of living from income to see if there's a surplus or a deficit. And so those were their deficits. So Toronto is just above Moncton. Fredericton more affordable than Moncton and more affordable than Toronto.
That's wild, because the cost of living has skyrocketed in Moncton.
Yeah.
People can't find homes. They can't find places to live. There's no availability.
And still one of the smallest minimum wages. I think New Brunswick's still at the lowest, even with another raise coming in this October.
Yeah.
I think that'll finally put it over maybe like Nova Scotia.
What is it now? It's $12.75.
Yeah.
It's going to $13.75 in September.
Yeah, and here I think it's 15.
However, I mean, things are going to change in the coming year because the Bank of Canada has announced an increase to interest rates, meaning a lot of people are going to be paying a lot more on their mortgages, meaning people that bought houses in the past few years may no longer be able to afford their mortgages. And so you might see a bunch of houses coming on the market, which could drive down the cost of buying homes, as well as the cost of rent. That being said, there are also apartment buildings going up all over Moncton. Everywhere you go, there's new complexes. I don't know if that's more for seniors or for young people. It could be seniors moving into the apartments, which will open up even more homes. But yeah, it's hard to say. Another big problem in New Brunswick is the double tax issue. If you own more than one home, you have to pay double the property tax on that. And that is the only province in Canada that still does that.
I did not know that.
Yep, Higgs had promised to eliminate that tax before COVID, and then COVID hit, and he said nope. So yeah, so for people trying to rent out their homes to others, they actually are paying twice the amount of property tax, which has also shot up. I don't know, like I feel like there's probably a recession coming soon. Well, we're already in a recession. I just feel like things are going to get worse in New Brunswick and in Toronto.
Maybe. I mean, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, you talked a lot about all of the healthcare stuff, and we just re-elected Doug Ford. So it's not like the political stance here is good at all. He's been notorious at cutting healthcare costs. Like now you have to pay for very important blood work for cancer and different things.
Oh, really?
You have to pay for it regardless of insurances or HIP, Medicare, whatever. You now have to pay for a lot of these tests, which is something that he just very silently implemented and no one even noticed. So the healthcare situation is still really bad. There's still no, I would say it seems, maybe it's just because my Facebook is very much still Moncton, but I see every time that the ER is Horizon Health is if please only come to the ER if it's an emergency, and I'm just how is that a message you're putting out on social media? But I don't think that there's really any beds at the hospitals here either, and our COVID situation still isn't great, and so that's still taking up. The last time I looked before you guys were coming, there was another 1,100 people in the ICU. So those are still 1,100 beds in Toronto for hospitals. So that's not a great situation either. He's not been funding education or the school systems. Like, they're still, it's no offense to anyone, but in my opinion, it's still a conservative government, and I don't find that they help fund the right things. So, yeah.
Well, that is one thing Ontario and New Brunswick have in common. They're being run by conservative governments that, are going to want to cut back on things.
Yeah.
But let's talk about jobs. So,
Sure.
A lot of the people or have met in Toronto are already employed, people who don't have jobs. Or again, maybe I'll look up some stats here. Is it easy for young people to find jobs in Toronto, in the city?
I would argue yes. There could be a statistic that says otherwise. It just seems to me that there's always business and opportunity and things. Like, if you're a young person, there's a million server jobs that can be had, from Starbucks to fine dining to like a waitress at Castle Loma, working at the castle. Like, there's a million jobs in that industry, it feels like. At the same time, I do know, it feels to me that a lot of people are getting these very fancy degrees in Toronto and probably across our whole country, and it's a fancy piece of paper that doesn't mean anything. And so you can get a job, but is it going to be what you dreamed of or worth the expensive education that you got? I know people with master's degrees in English and in publishing, and it's still a very cutthroat industry, and you might not get it. You might have paid $60,000 to still just be a barista at Starbucks, but you're employed and you're off the street. But with the cost of living and minimum wage, you're probably just skating by. Because if a 1-bedroom apartment is $1,500 to $1,600, how much do you have to make at minimum wage to be able to afford that and then still live a life? That's where it's very complicated, and where shout out to my father, I'm very blessed that he let me stay there so I could have no debt, so I can afford to live here, because without him, would not be able to afford this apartment. Which I might as well say, you're seeing a different angle, so now you've seen the majority of the apartment. $1,200, which is exactly a third of my base salary, which is what it's supposed to be. But there's no debt, there's no credit cards.
Yeah.
So yeah, but there are still, like I said, the homelessness thing is still very real, and there's still, a lot of I think people who are still struggling, who cannot get out of this system. Our system still isn't great here either. There's still a lot of barriers. Yes, we have community health centers, which there aren't in New Brunswick, and that's my job. But the people that they serve still, they go there for a meal and for fresh clothes, and they're still not necessarily getting jobs or employed. So there is still those stigmas and mental health issues that contribute to, I'm sure, a big unemployment rate. But yeah. I feel like there's still more opportunity.
Yeah, I'd say it's weird, because in a place like this, there's going to be more opportunity, but also more competition. Yeah. In terms of housing, in Moncton, it's pretty hard to find a place right now. People are being put on waiting lists. They are just scouring for anything. If you have kids or you have pets, forget about it. It's a big problem. And also with jobs, I guess a lot of people can work from home nowadays if you're experienced. And I will say the university issue, going to school for university for 4 years and then never working in your field, that's not new either. So that's always been, for decades, it's always been like that. Which is part of why I guess I didn't feel I wanted to go to university. And again, I'm still on the fence about whether I regret that or not. Life hasn't turned out horrible.
There's a blog about that.
Right.
Visit BlackLantic.ca and find that blog.
And also, without getting into it yet, shout out to your pops, because that is, for people who don't understand systemic racism and racism in general, or why in some provinces like Nova Scotia there are programs specifically for Black people. It's because they don't understand the concept of generational wealth. Yeah. The idea that if your parents or your grandparents or your great-grandparents or your great-great-grandparents had different opportunities than people of color, if they didn't completely mess that up, they are going to be able to pass things down to their children when they are alive or when they pass, whether it be helping you out with a place to live while they're alive, or some kind of inheritance of a home or savings that really helps with generational wealth. And back when racism is still a problem, but back when racism was the kind of problem where a person of color could not get a job, could not have opportunity, could not have money, could not buy a home, Black people nowadays, they weren't passed down that generational wealth in a lot of cases. And then people will say, oh, well, you know, I'm white and I'm broke and I had to struggle. Well, I mean, there could be a lot of reasons for that, but it's not because your forefathers didn't have opportunity. I'm sorry to say that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the only other thing I was going to add too is even, I mean, this is a Black specific podcast, but even poverty is systemic. Like the whole reason I got my scholarship was saying that like I had been like in 2 or 3 generations of people who had been like on welfare, no opportunity, but still regarded education. And I wanted to be the person in my family to break that system because at the time, I can't speak to now, but like the welfare program gives you just enough money to eat, house yourself, and that's it. You never get to go above to a place where you can afford nice things that let you like a printer to print a resume to get a job is even a big ask on like $750 a month for 2 people. And that's what it was like back in the early 2000s. So the systems in place don't feel like they're there to help you. So it's definitely difficult. And I assume in both cities.
Poverty is systemic among all cultures. No matter where. Yeah, you're designed to. And it's just, there's something weird about human nature that, you know, we seem to want to give more to and help out the rich more than the poor. There's something in human nature, you see it. Like when you see someone poor, you're mad at them or you're disgusted at them. Not you or not me, but like people. There's this societal like disgust with people who aren't doing well. And if they're not getting a handout, how can they ever get ahead?
Yes.
Now, we talked about jobs, but what about opportunity? Like what about, let's say you're an entrepreneur. Let's say you want to build and create something new from scratch that didn't exist before. I think Toronto is definitely a city that you can do that in, but at the same time, there have already been so many things built and established and infrastructure created because Toronto's just been a bustling city forever. Yeah. And I truly feel that if you are an entrepreneur with an idea, or you just want to reinvent something here that doesn't exist in New Brunswick, I think going out to the Maritimes as a young person, single or with a family, is a great place to build new things. There are so many things that cities like Moncton and Fredericton and St. John, even Halifax need, that there was not a need for before because of a smaller population or less diversity, less culture and stuff like that. So I think in a place like Moncton, if you want to build something new, then that would be a good place to live. I think, in general, people say cities are better for the young, but if you want to raise a family, you move out to the country. Even a lot of my friends who I grew up with in Toronto, they're not here anymore. They're all out in the suburbs around the city. Like they all move out to Markham or Vaughan or Oakville or Sauga or something like that. Buy a house and have a family. And it's even cheaper if you go like an hour or 2 north. Yeah. So it's the same concept. I mean, rural Ontario is very similar to rural New Brunswick.
Yes.
And like 100%. We just said, they're both currently conservative run. Yeah. And it's just times have changed. I mean, I'm already here with my family and it's been a day. I know we just flew in, but I'm already tired. Yeah. I went outside this morning and there's just cars and traffic and so much in people. Yeah. I'm sure I'll adapt within a day or so, but it's definitely not my calm, peaceful, quiet country life that I'm starting to get accustomed to. Which is going to be weird for me when I go, just because I still was I was on Bonnecourt and St. George when I left. I was on the stripper street. Downtown. It was busy. Moncton. Moncton. Oh, that was busy. So we'll see how I do. But in terms of opportunity, I think that what you'll see is a lot of people start something and it shutters quite quickly, either because of the cost or things change or something about the area or the population changes. But people have often said that Moncton is 5 years behind Toronto. You can have a concept here. And gosh, I would have said 30 a while ago, but maybe catching up a bit. Go on. Catching up a bit, but even things like the Inspire Art Mural Festival, that's something that's been going on now for probably 5 years, and that's something that I think would have been done here a long time ago. I think it's very cool. I think it makes Moncton really hip. I think
even some of the different festivals that happened. Like I remember when Magma started the multicultural festival, that was like something unique and different. The way that they do Acadie Rock now, like a lot of those things that have made Moncton cooler those concepts have existed here for a long time.
Yeah.
But to your point, I feel that people, well, I'll say this with like an actual concrete specific idea. The owner of the restaurant Clos,
Yep.
which had like 9-course tasting menu, was very bougie and fancy. He was from Toronto. He brought it out there.
Didn't work.
But and I was devastated. But it's because I live here and I'm like I seek out that stuff, and I think maybe Moncton was not the right demographic for it. But you would think taking ideas like that, different restaurant foodie experiences, and building it out there might work. But it really probably depends on the idea. But I definitely see that there's a lot of things here that could go there and would be wildly successful because there's nothing like it. And here there's already 30, 50, 100. So yeah.
I think where it wouldn't have worked pre-COVID, it might work now.
Yeah.
Because you've had such a huge influx of people to the
Yes.
province. I know like people in New Brunswick are not typically open to new ideas. And that might have been changing, but I'll give you an example.
Sure.
When I worked as a manager at Casino Buffet, at the buffet, they were using a lot of cheap, crappy, frozen, preservative-stuffed, lower quality foods in the buffet. And a chef came in from another province, and he convinced the casino to let them revamp everything.
Okay.
So they started using fresh ingredients, fresh foods, higher quality things. And you know what happened, I'm guessing, by the stress. People didn't like it. They complained. They didn't like the higher quality food. They were used to the garbage. I know there have been a few like mature crowd clubs that had tried to open in Moncton over the years, and they all shut down. One, because I think in New Brunswick in general, like by 24, you're married with 3 kids.
Yeah.
And people aren't growing up. But I mean, that has changed. There's a lot more young professionals without kids, a bigger disposable income, who are looking for things to do. A lot of the friends who I've met from Ontario or the West Coast over the past couple of years, they're dying. They're so hungry. They're craving for a better nightlife.
Yeah.
Things like Inspire Festival, which just happens once a year, and there's a couple of good festivals. We're just specifically talking about Moncton, but this can apply to a lot of the Maritimes. There's like 10 of those festivals happening every day in Toronto. So
oh my God,
if
yeah.
you are someone who thrives on art and culture and dance and music, Toronto's obviously a good city to live. But the caveat is, because it's so busy and stressful, I mean, you're really impressive in how active you are and how many events you go to and how many things you do. Because I find a lot of people living in Toronto, even myself, when you live here, you don't have time to do any of the things.
Yeah.
I am probably going to do more sightseeing this week
than you did when you lived here?
Than I did in like a decade of living here.
Right.
When I was younger, I used to have to work 3 jobs and just to make ends meet. And it's just so busy and it takes forever to do everything. I just, again, is Max like going to pounce on me? Hey, bud.
No.
I find that a lot of Torontonians grow up in this city and they don't do the things. They work, they go to school, they sleep, they may see friends, they may go to a bar, but
it's also different when you grew up here and you're used to seeing all that versus being someone from Moncton who is the starving, hungry, wanting more. Like I remember the first time I came here and freaking out and at everything. It was the layover between like flying to Italy. So we did Moncton to Toronto to Frankfurt, and when the 6-hour layover, we did 1.5 hour site tour of like a driving tour of the U of T campus and like that architecture and like some of downtown and all these different buildings. And then we stopped at the Eaton Center and had an hour and a half to shop. Yeah. And I just remember like that was mind blowing to me. I had Champlain Place. It was one level. It was just one flat level. I remember they had this like big towering like movie poster for Breaking Dawn, and I was so obsessed with Twilight, and I was just like, they have movie posters in the mall of like my favorite people. Like I was like obsessed, and I was like, you have to move back. And then I brought my mom here to see One Direction, and I was like, you have to move here. And there's a lot to do. And I think that's part of the misconception about living here being so expensive, because like, if you're frugal, if you really want to try, you can find the free stuff. Most museums have a free night. All of the street festivals in the summer are free to walk through. Sure, you have to buy your food, and if you see a knickknack, that stuff can add up. But all of those things end up being free.
I have a question, and I don't know the answer to it.
Okay.
But again, I don't know, like, you've lived in Toronto for a year and a half, 2 years?
Of the 5 I've lived in Ontario, I only did a year and a half in Ottawa. So probably 3.5.
Okay.
Because I did 2 years of university, and I've been back this time since August.
And back like 5, you lived here how many years ago?
2017 I moved.
Were you doing as much back then? And were you working... My question is, I wonder if with COVID and stuff like that, a lot of people have been working from home and are working from home, which means...
A lot of people have been working from home and are working from home is what you just said.
That makes sense. They have been and they still are. Because my question is, getting around Toronto is quite time consuming.
Oh, yeah.
If you were driving, even from North York or somewhere else, like if you work downtown, getting to work could be 2 or 3 hours of your day.
100%.
If you're taking the TTC, it might take you 2 hours to get to work and come home. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious, do you think you would have the energy to do all the things you're doing, be out as much, go to events, if you had to commute 3 hours a day or 2 hours a day just to get to your job and get home?
Definitely not. When I used to live here, I only had to commute for one job for a summer once.
Yeah.
It let me explore that specific neighborhood, and I thought that was really cute, and I would take my time coming home from work. There's, like, for me personally, several factors that have made it so that I can go out so much. There is the working from home. That means that, like, I have no social and I have no commute. So, like, if I'm here from 10 till 3, I have to be going out at night because that feels like I did nothing with my day.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sobriety also changes, like, everything. When I last lived here, I was drinking almost every single day, doing blow probably 3 to 4 times a week. I didn't have energy to be networking. I didn't have a job I was passionate about. I didn't have this business that I want to share with people to go networking. I didn't have all these passions.
Yeah.
I was a student who hated being an older student redoing an undergrad. I had my mom's trauma going on, and I was still working at Shoppers. Like, there were still events. Like, I did start the fashion stuff back then, and I did some of them. It also does feel like because of COVID, there's now 3 events a day to jam pack the 2 years of being missed. So not only am I reinvigorated and going out because I'm a different person and I really want to experience the city the right way, everybody wants to do something like 3 things a day because all of these businesses have been waiting to put themselves back out there. So It's both things. But there, of course, like, if I was commuting and working with real people, maybe I would be inside a lot more. I would probably just keep my social to Saturday and Sunday like most people and figure out what's going on the weekend. As opposed to now, it's like, I'm going to a Black crypto event on the Tuesday I come back from Moncton. Like, that's a Tuesday night. Who's going out on Tuesday nights? I am.
Black crypto event? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously people in Toronto are doing things every night. So, I mean, I don't know if it was just me or the people around me, and I did stuff too. I mean, there are events. I wonder if these events are packed with people who are from here or not, and stuff like that. But all in all, I mean, living in Toronto or New Brunswick is, you know, quite the different experience. Absolutely.
100%.
With some people would disagree with me. I was going to say pros and cons to both, but the reality is New Brunswick is visually such a beautiful place to be. If you like outdoors, if you like nature, if you are generally healthy, because the healthcare system is garbage, but you said that Ontario is starting to decline as well.
Of course.
I think there are more jobs now than there used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Cost of living is bad in both places. Moncton used to be a dirt cheap place. It used to be one of the best places to buy a home or live years ago, and that's changed, and we're going to see what happens in the next year.
It's still ranked as like one of the better places to buy a home in the country. Because it's still cheap, but it's not cheap for people from Moncton. Like, if you're at that, like, if you want to bring your Ontario money to live with that, that's what happened over the pandemic.
Yep.
All of the East Coast got eaten up by Ontario people who had the bank and wanted that housing market.
Which sucks for New Brunswickers. It truly does, because again, they're earning a different living wage as well before the rates all skyrocketed.
Especially because, like, if you can work remote and you can make Ontario money while living in New Brunswick and continue to make that and not have to do, like, a ratio cut back to, like, New Brunswick salaries, that's crazy.
Now, someone once told me recently that, you know, and I don't know if I agree with it, that maybe this was New Brunswickers' fault. Like, they didn't see the opportunity that was there. Like, the land was so cheap and the housing was so cheap, and the government was selling land for like $1 at certain periods in certain areas, and like no one scooped that up. But the more I think about it, I mean, there wouldn't have been such a demand to scoop it up back then, because there wasn't that demand, because people weren't flocking to New Brunswick.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd like to hear everyone's thoughts.
Yeah.
Listeners, what do you think? Better to live in a big city or a rural community, or a quote-unquote city in New Brunswick? I think that'll be it, though, for an episode today. Short and sweet. We put a half hour in.
The last I'll say is I agree. There's pros and cons to both. Like, like I said at the very beginning, I will initially shit on New Brunswick, and then by the end of the conversation, I'm like, oh, I miss home.
Yeah.
They both have great perks. I think that
it's a beautiful place, is the thing.
There's benefits to both in different areas of your life, depending on the person that you are, like different time periods. Yeah. I think spending your 20s to 30s in Toronto is great, and then doing your, like...
The family thing.
Like, that's still in the back of my head of, like, am I going to get a house?
You were talking about that,
Am I going to get a house in Moncton eventually, or Oakville?
Not a bad strategy, because again, a lot of my friends who I grew up in Toronto with, they haven't left Ontario, but they've certainly left Toronto. They're just not here anymore. I lost my train of thought. Oh, I guess I will be able to say by our next episode, after a week here, I didn't expect for COVID to happen. I haven't been in Toronto in 4 years. I'll report back after a week to tell everyone how much I miss Toronto, if I wish I lived here still, what it's been like, and all of that good stuff. So,
and we'll see how I survive in the farm. If I make it out alive.
You're gonna love it. You're going to a gigantic farmhouse to yourself. You're gonna bring like a stand. You take pictures in the fields.
I'm sure that I'm gonna do the picturesque
grass flowing
thing,
in the wind, river in the background.
I'm still gonna run away from the peacock. Like,
Alex the peacock. He's not gonna run towards you or anything. He won't let you get too close. The turkeys will you can walk right up to them. You can pet them, stuff like that. The geese.
To be fair, I'm more afraid of driving.
The geese spit a mean game.
I haven't driven in 5 years.
Yep. You're gonna be.
I'm practicing tomorrow night at like in the dark, just like going granny level.
You'll be fine.
I trust.
You'll be fine. Yeah. So again, to people who have been watching or following us, we are doing a house swap.
Yeah.
So that's why we're here, and if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button.
Yes.
And let's go have a day.
Yeah. Let's go show Clinton his home again.
It's my home, which I've forgotten. Yeah.
Check out the GoFundMe. Like, comment, subscribe. All of the social media. Bye.
Peace.